Welcome to UX Banter Podcast Season 2.
I'm your host Dushyant
Kanungo. Here, I speak with industry leaders about their journey in design and know more about what inspires them to become the best in the industry. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 organization. Hello everyone. Welcome to the second season's episode of UX Banter Podcast. Our guest for today is a web designer who has turned into a UXer. She is a mentor, philanthropist, and a sci-fi lover who is extremely passionate about creating great user experiences with research and strategy. The one who has worked with brands like Fathom, New Way, and UMC. She is an award-winning professional. Please welcome the UX Digital Strategist and user interface designer at Overdrive, Shannon Kelly.
Hello.
Hi, Shannon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So how are you feeling today? All good? Everything?
All good. I think I've had a couple cups of coffee. I got another one in front of me, so I'm good to go.
As all the designers should. Industry wouldn't survive without tea or coffee, if you ask me. I mean, that is the bare minimum requirement to survive.
Yes, absolutely. And especially as I'm a parent, so it's like you got to have coffee to get by.
All right. So what is like to, the journey that you've been on from as a professional, from web designer to the digital strategist part as it comes? I mean, how the journey was like, how did you came to be the professional that you are?
Sure. So I did graduate from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh way back 2005. Back then those degrees were more focused on just design and the applications and stuff like that. There were no real UX programs in the school that I went to. So it wasn't a thing where I went, at least. For years, I was working in either web design or in email marketing. I've worked at a few agencies, and I really picked up a lot of different skills working at those agencies. I kind of learned the, digital marketing as a whole, I guess you could say, and I was very passionate about that for a very long time. But I was still working very much as a visual or a UI designer, just laying out designs and sending them off to the clients and whatnot. It wasn't until I was approached and said, "Hey, do you want to learn about conversion rate optimization?" And I was like, "Sure, like what's this?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, you can use data to justify your design decisions and also how you learn to make recommendations and stuff like that." And I thought, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And I really got into it. I dove in headfirst into Google Analytics, and I learned about heat mapping and split testing. And from there, it kind of just propelled me into UX because
that's the natural course of action, because you were doing like half the things there already, that you were trying to understand the user's mindset. And once you know that, I mean, it's natural to head into this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my passion and love for the more quantitative side of things really did gear me up for learning more about the qualitative and user interviews and user testing and things like that. So I think it's the one thing that kind of helped catalyst me from a designer to a UX professional is that gap where I was like, okay, I can learn how to use this data to not only help my clients, but also make better recommendations for their users. So it was just kind of like that the snowball effect,
True. And also the recognition that actually comes, and being associated with the community helps. I mean, I can see that you were a board member at UXPA, which is one of the biggest conferences to take place in the industry. What's your experience like engaging with the conference from the inside?
I think it's fun. It's a really interesting journey there. I think it's like I originally was like, okay, yeah, I want to volunteer and help out and kind of help other people in the industry not only break into the industry but learn more about the different aspects and ways of testing and stuff like that in UX. And I think when I was brought on, it was kind of like, okay, you're gonna do this, and then we're gonna help you out here, you're gonna do this here. And I was like, okay. And then it ended up kind of like just progressing and, okay, you're going to be our social media person for, the local chapter of UXPA Cleveland. And then from there, it kind of like, you could say I kind of rose the ladder, but I think I was unofficially the vice president of the board starting this year. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I was able to take all my actual marketing knowledge and all my UX knowledge and kind of combine that and really help educate people and put together events and whatnot. So
UXPA is actually quite popular and solid with great attendance. I mean, I attended the one in 2019, the last one, actually, in-person conference. It was in Boston.
yeah.
And it was jam-packed with people. I mean, from top to bottom, you can see. And we were exhibiting there as well. Got to meet a lot of interesting people there. Quite a few talks that we got about design system and stuff. They were amazing. So yeah, it was quite a bit of a conference to be at. And understanding that because the size and the impact of UXPA goes into the community of designers, I think what the way that you are connected is, something special.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially since like it was our local little chapter here in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was we were able to impact the people in our community that were looking for jobs, that were looking to advance, and it was a great opportunity to network and also help companies find willing and excited candidates too, in the area. So I hope one day I can attend a big UXPA international conference someday. I guess with the pandemic and all that stuff, it's been kind of hard to do all those in-person events, but I hope to, knock on wood, one day go and be a part of that, and maybe be a part of that organization as well. So
it has made a lot of difference to the world. The entire, the pandemic thing, especially with researchers, it becomes really difficult to actually get with the people. New challenges have arisen, new technologies have taken the center stage, of course. So in that regard, I think that is when I need to ask you that you are also mentoring with ADP List. I mean, I am also a mentor there. And if you know, the first season's first guest that we had is Mr. Felix Lee, who is the founder of ADP List. So how is the experience of mentoring has been during the last few years?
I think it's funny. I think the opportunity to mentor has really grown a lot more, especially since the pandemic locked down everything and everybody's been online anyways. I think it's been easier to reach more people digitally and all across the world, to be able to talk to them, mentor them, and help them in their journey and guide them, wherever their passion lies, and help, steer the direction of where they want to go. I think before the pandemic, it was very much like, oh, I'll just, local people help them out, or, talk to people here and there. And it's really just kind of grown. I mean, I'm in UX groups on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that, and people reach out all the time. They're looking for help with their portfolio, and even if it's not in a formal setting, I can at least say, hey, let's get on a Zoom call, or yeah, I'll review this for you, give me a few days and I'll give you some feedback and whatnot. So I think it's been just a great opportunity to just help people. I think that's where I'm really passionate about, is helping people. I think that this is kind of my core journey for UX is, you want to make the experience better for people, and that's helping them in some way. And if you can make things easier for them, it's like, okay, it's all kind of goes hand in hand. I enjoy mentoring because I enjoy helping people, and I enjoy UX because I enjoy helping people. So it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, but this is not just about mentoring in the UX itself, right? I mean, you are also associated with a lot of humanitarian causes, with food bank and with education, human rights, and you keep yourself busy with all sorts of activities where you are constantly trying to make the world a better place. You're always helping out people with, a lot of things which people who are at disadvantage, you are constantly moving yourself and, trying to help them with something or the other. So how does that has inspired your work or change your work as a UX professional while knowing that there is a lot of suffering in the world?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I very much have equity in mind when I think about UX. I think there's opportunities to help people that maybe don't get the advantage that other people may get. And I think there's something that, like I said, there's a passion of helping people. And I think it's like, just allowing people to have access to things that maybe they didn't necessarily have access to, or couldn't have access to, or or maybe just at a disadvantage. So I think that's like, regardless of what I'm working for, or I'm volunteering for, or whatever like that, I just feel it's a big passion of mine. I think working at Overdrive, we're the digital ebook and ebooks and audiobook distributors for pretty much all the all the libraries in the United States, probably about 90% of them. And then we also do schools too. And I think our mission there has always been supporting the library. I think that's the one place in the world where everybody can go and it's, equitable. It's got access to everything that you need there. If you need access to the internet, you can get that there. If books, audiobooks, movies, music, anything, you can get that at the library. You can go there for career advice for people. You have librarians that'll help you write a resume and maybe work on your doctorate or something like that. You have a report or something like that you need help with. It doesn't matter who you are, what age, you go into the library, and it's
True.
equal opportunity for everybody there, and anybody can get a
Those
library
are,
card. It's great.
libraries are truly the only last few places have left on this planet where you can simply walk in and not expected to pay anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. I think that's where my passion and helping people and whatnot. I think working for Overdrive has been really great because yes, we are a for-profit company. We want to make money, but at the same time, we're very much supportive of that initiative of keeping the libraries alive. When the pandemic hit and all the libraries shut down, it's like people were like, what am I going to do? I can't access my, books and stuff like that. And we were able to say, hey, we're here for you. You can get a library card online. At most your locations, you can still access your books here, but it's just going to be in digital format. So I think a lot of people learn the advantages of that. And I think what the library provides, where that equity comes in is it's free for everybody. You can borrow a book. You may have to wait for it, but you can borrow a book for free or listen to an audiobook. And you're not paying for a subscription on, a big name company out there. So it's like, people buy books, which is great. You need to support your publishers and your authors. But supporting your local library also supports those people too. So I just think it's a great opportunity, to be able to spread the message of here, you can get all the knowledge you can for free and, utilize your library, please.
Absolutely. In our city here, what they have done is that people have started those whiter spaces on rent for students. So they just generally call it library, but what they actually give you is an air conditioning and internet connection. And you can bring your laptop, sit there, and everybody will be quiet, and just to give you that ambiance of a library. And
Nice.
people can actually sit down and do their work if they get a lot of distraction, maybe at work or maybe at any other place. So that sort of hot desking is at a very cheap rates. They are actually offering and calling it a library. I think it's more about the feeling that you have that sort of safe space that you can sit down and do your own thing, read a book, maybe write a book if you want to.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yes, I think that actually works a lot better. But it's true that libraries should survive and we should do everything in our power to make that happen. And you being at Overdrive, I think that is, one of the great stories that you have just said that, the company actually works in the favor of that. All right. With that, I'm moving to our section of UX Banter podcast, which is called Rapid Fire.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yeah, I guess as best as I can be.
So they are not going to be that controversial, or maybe that, the way that you want to answer it, it will go the funny or not. So let me shuffle the deck. So I have no clue that which are the question and what is the order. We'll just run through them. And because it is going to be rapid, I'll just, switch and ask. Okay. Your last Google search.
Oh, I don't even know. I guess I think it was a recipe. I think I looked up a recipe.
The recipe of what?
It was a cookie. It was called the kitchen sink cookie. It's like a chocolate chip cookie with pretzels and caramel in it. So
delicious. Okay, with that, fast food or fine dining?
Oh, fine dining if I can. I mean, if I can afford it. But don't get me wrong, I like a good Chick-fil-A too, though. That's fast food.
Well, I've got an answer that was actually quite a balance, which was like a good bar food, which is not a fast food, but not a fine dining, and you get a perfect balance of, all the cravings of a carb that you can actually run through with it.
That's absolutely right. That's a good answer too.
Your least favorite subject in school or college?
Probably English language. Yeah, I was always bad at writing. I was always bad at it, so I hated writing papers, which is funny because I'm going back to school now. So.
SEO. Yeah, the irony is never lost. I mean, every time we are going to talk, we were speaking with another individual on the topic here, and they said that they hated mathematics, but now all they're doing is creating dashboard for enterprise applications. I'm like, this, and it wasn't lost on them that they said
Yeah.
that's the world for you. Okay.
Yeah, same. I can't say math now because I use a lot of quantitative data. So I'm like, I'm adding, subtracting, dividing.
Okay. If you can move anywhere on Earth, where would you go?
If I were going to move, I think it would probably be Australia because I've got family there. So.
Oh, nice. So I've been to Sydney though, but that's the only thing that I know around Australia. Okay, your guilty pleasure.
Binge watching sci-fi shows. So I would say that my latest would be Stranger Things. That was my guilty pleasure, is just binge watching that.
Touche. I mean, I'm right there with you. Right now, I'm watching the Orville and the Star Trek Strange New Worlds. There's a
Okay,
new
cool.
season which is just come out. But yeah, that's right there. Okay, books or movies?
Oh, books for sure. I work for a company that supports libraries. I gotta say books.
What's your favorite book then?
Gosh, that's so hard to land down. There's so many good books out there, but I guess I would say I recently just read The Secret Life. I think it's Secret Life of Addie LaRue, I think it's called, and it's a really interesting book. I think that's what it's called. I could be wrong, but but that was a good one. I read through it very fast, and I think that's probably why I forget the title exactly. But yeah.
No, it happens. But yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't a UX book, because generally we get a lot of recommendation on UX based books, and I'm like, yeah, somebody must say something about something which is not related to UX.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
want to know more about.
Yeah, I'm like, I love my UX books. I got a pile of them on my desk over here, but if I'm gonna read for pleasure, it's gonna definitely be something like sci-fi, fantasy, something around that realm. So
True. Are you a sunrise or a sunset person?
sunset person, because I am not a morning person.
Okay, go out or stay in?
Stay in. I think I'm a little bit of a hermit sometimes.
Just a homely person would be nice. I mean, not
Yeah.
saying. I mean, so if you want to eat that bar food, you have to go out. That
Yeah,
is
exactly. I've been doing a lot of ordering in if I do order out though, because I've been having to deliver DoorDash or Grubhub or something like that.
I was the recluse as well, but I have a few friends of mine who would just park their car on Saturday afternoon in front of my house and just shout that, why don't you just sit here? We'll take you out somewhere. We'll have some food and then we'll drop you back. Don't worry. Okay, if you win $10 million tomorrow, what would be the first thing that you buy?
I think if buying is paying off my house, I'd probably pay off my house. That's officially buying it, right? You're
those are actually past, but you already spent the money. I'm just saying the new thing that you need to buy.
I don't even know. I think I would just invest in stocks. I don't know. That's buying stocks. There you go. Buying stocks. I would buy stocks.
Cool. So least favorite job title till date?
Internet specialist was the least favorite job title.
What does that even mean?
I was basically a web designer, but they just called the internet specialist because I worked on the internet. So
I mean, like, this is like the only person in the company who knows anything about the net. And
yeah, I'm like, I was the only peon that worked there that knew that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm like, so I was the internet specialist. And I thought, well, that doesn't really help my career path at all. It sounds like I'm in IT,
Yeah, this reminds me of that show, The IT Crowd, which was on BBC, that left click, right click, double click.
I love that show.
Amazing, actually. And then they have this internet. So when you say that you are responsible for making sure that the internet doesn't break, which is placed at the top of the Big Ben Tower. Okay. One day in your life you would like to relive?
I think I would go back and relive my my wedding day. I think that would be fun. Yeah, it was a simple day and it was a good day, but it was just a very simple wedding, and I would go back and do that again.
Nice memories. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. I mean, some people do not go there and say it was a horrible. We had this and that and those things, and people got drunk and there was a big fight and all those things.
That was my first marriage. That was my first wedding. I would say it's like my current marriage. I say that wedding. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a very nice experience. It was very low key. Let's just say that.
Great, great. With that, I think I have done with the cards deck. So this goes back down here. And coming back to the UX part of it.
Yeah,
So
sure.
this is one thing that actually came out when we were actually doing some research, which is about the deep dive mapping in UX. This is one term that actually I really wanted to talk more about if you're comfortable.
Yeah, sure. I kind of believe like with UX, sometimes people get caught up in like the specialties in certain areas. They just want to do the quantitative and qualitative stuff. So, or one of either one of those. So I think it's important to deep dive into every aspect of data that you can. No matter if you're conducting that data or conducting those tests or whatever like that, being able to sit down and really digest that information. So I'm just a very big fan of people say it's like you shouldn't be a unicorn, but I'm a fan of being a unicorn because you get to know how things work throughout the whole process. And I think, in my case, I'm like, I don't mind that, yes, you should have a focus of something that you're really good at, but I think there's no shame in knowing different aspects of what UX can do, what you can, the different types of testing methods, the different, types of data pooling and whatnot. I think there's just something good about being able to kind of combine all that data together and figure it out, organize it, and make sense of it,
So that is, I think, if somebody asks that, what does a UXer do? And the answer could be that we just make sense of things.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. I think that's like we make sense of things and we try to push back and make things go the way we think they should go. I think instead of saying, I think we should do this, it's like, I know this is the right way to do this because we tested with people, we asked people, we looked at data. This is the way we should be going, not the way you're suggesting. It's hard sometimes. I think it's hard to be the type of person to be the pushback person. And I think I think it's, we make sense of things and hopefully we push back when we can. So
it is a big responsibility to do the user advocacy at the table. I think that has always been my theme of this show, that whenever we are going to talk, the importance that a UX designer gets when we are actually converting. It's not just you are important, it is just the people behind you, the users give you that sort of a power to represent them at the table when the decisions are being made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that like we're first, we're at the table first along with everybody else who's planning, whether it's major stakeholders or whomever, the project managers. Like we should be at the table in that discussion of strategy and what's the plan for this project, what are we going to do. I think a lot of the times, there's a lot of companies that have immature UX practices, and it's like they're tossing us in at late in the game or just when we launch it, or we'll iterate on that type of thing. And it's like, no, we could have done this right the first way, and you're not sitting there doing iterations of development and design updates in the in the future. If we're at the table in the forefront, if we're planning, strategizing, and organizing things, we can make the process easier for everybody in a company. So
Shannon, right, putting that thought directly, that we have this one client where we've been engaging for a long run project, and then we said that why don't we have user testing? And their answer was, we know these people, we know how they work, how they think, and we know everything about them. And then the product is built, it is launched, and they say there is a lot of issues in the UX. We are receiving feedback from people. That feedback could have been taken at the wireframe stages, not to build the product, launch it in the market, and then collect that feedback. And that is what is you call user testing. So it is just people don't understand that the difference between collecting feedback and the user testing, as it is called. So,
yeah. I mean, you can find those issues beforehand, before launch. And especially, I like to say, like, I know it's hard for small companies to like have a dedicated UX team or pay for a UX company to come in. But if you're a small company, entrepreneurial kind of, like status type of thing. You're very, very small and you're trying to launch a product for the first time. You're like, that this would benefit the world. This thing is going to be great. You're going to just go out and launch it. 95% of like small businesses fail, So if you had somebody on your team that said, hey, let's do some testing and even just some market research, doing some just to find out if this really is a need, if it's something that people want, if they find value in it. If you do that up front, you can really make better decisions. And I fully believe that if small companies could invest in some kind of UX, more would succeed in the long run. You would get that feedback in the forefront.
Absolutely. I mean, this brings us to the point where people are trying to understand that what these professionals are trying to do. I mean, going back, we have had a long careers. I think I would imagine that when you start as a web designer and internet expert, internet specialist, I think obviously there are designations which have been changed and updated. I started as a graphic designer, then they were calling me web graphic designer for some reason, and then I thought, what is a web graphic designer? It's a web designer. And then they decided, no, it is not just web, and they design mobile as well. So it is UI designer because Apple decided to make iPhones and all that. So during the past, a lot has changed. The way that we are approaching design, the way the designations have laid out, and then we are designing for smartwatches, we are designing for smart glasses. Next is AR and VR and all those things which are on the way. Where do you think we are headed? Because now we can talk about the UX, which is designed directly by artificial intelligence. So where do you think UX is headed?
Sometimes I get scared at where the direction of UX is headed. Sometimes I feel like I view things going backwards to the ways that was, okay, we're just going to design a website and put it out there type of thing, or we're just going to put, design an app or whatever. I fear that we're not going to be in the forefront of those strategies and those projects and whatnot. So that's where I fear it's going. Where I think it could be a really great thing is if more companies obviously had a better, more mature UX practice in their companies. If they're hiring professionals and they're hiring not just people who are experts in the field, but also hiring junior people who are struggling to break into the industry, and give them a chance and just show what they can do. There's I know it's tough. It's like, you want an expert, but they also want to hire at like a entry-level budget. You always hear that on jobs and whatnot. So, I mean, if you can hire junior people and some experts on your team, I think that's great. I think that's a great balance, because I think experts and seniors in the industry really, I mean, from what I've seen, really do enjoy helping and supporting junior people. So.
I completely agree with there is another fact that I'd like to add here. There's another caveat, which is, I think the creativity is like an energy that you have, and as the time goes by, you run the risk of running out. So in the early stages of your career, you are very inspired by these beautiful UI designs, and you want to recreate everything in your client designs and all. And then with time, that energy actually slows down, and for that you need fresh blood, and you have to hire freshers. You don't need to get people who are already molded by somebody else, right? So if I'm getting a fresher and I'm trusting them that they have the capacity, and we can trust on them to do something which is out of the box, they will give you the solutions that you might not get from, say, 8 or 10 years old experienced fella, because they will be scared to touch the buttons on the VCR.
I kind of agree on that, because I right now I have an intern that we hired for the summer. She didn't have like really any UX experience as far as like what you qualify as UX now. She had a little bit of Google Analytics knowledge, but she had more of a web developer design background. So it's very design heavy, and she knew a little bit of code too. She was really interested in learning more of like how to gather data and whatnot. But what's really good about it is that she came in to the company with a really fresh perspective. She had no idea what the company did until obviously she was interviewing. And she came in and I gave her a project, and she just had a completely different point of view of the project. And I thought, this is good. This is fresh eyes, fresh blood.
Absolutely.
She's looking at it from a different perspective. I've been here 4 years. The people who are on the team, like maybe here 8 to 10 years or something like that, they're used to seeing things, through the lens of like how we talk within the company. And she's looking at things from an outsider perspective. So I think there's value in hiring people who are junior or interns or whatever it is, because you don't just like throw work on their plate and just hope they can complete it. I think there's an opportunity for them to learn and grow and, potentially get hired in your organization too. So, yeah, I think I just think that if more companies were willing to not only hire seniors, but hire a junior,
There has to be a balance. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's absolutely the fantastic strategy to have. Then you have people you can rely on, you can give them work as it comes in volumes, and you get delivery as standard because they know how work is done and finished. But then you have these new breed of people who know that how to go out and break the shackles and bring something new to the table, the new micro interactions, some fancy animation, a new JavaScript that does wonders, and they have this constant knack of hitting the hammer
Yeah.
to do the,
Well, she's just I was gonna say, even like they're just more inspired and just ready to go. They want to learn all they can and absorb it. And I think when you've been in the industry for years, sometimes you can get beat up, but like you're saying, that kind of your energy drains on it. You get beat up. You're kind of sick and tired of pushing back or so it's kind of good to have somebody who's so enthusiastic about not only the work that they're doing, but learning in the process. It can be very refreshing, it can be very inspiring too. And
so
good for morale.
with freshers and seniors debate, let's talk about you.
Yep.
You have won quite a few awards in your time with regards to so how much inspiration that you get out of these recognitions, or how have they've been played the bigger role? So of course, if you are participating or there is a contest that you are actually putting, so what sort of energy levels you need to maintain, what more motivation should one have, that putting yourself out there, seeing that okay, here is a contest that I'm going to go in, I really want to make sure that we put our best foot forward, because many people just see that those things happening but never dare to actually just say, yeah, let me try it out.
Yeah, I think there's like a dual type of like inspiration to do these type of things. I think one thing is like, especially if you're really happy about the company you're working for, especially if it's like an external type of contest type of thing, it's not only in a way to like promote yourself, promote your skills and show off what you can do, but then also there's that brand recognition that goes around the company you're working to. So if you're like really jazzed about where you work and you want to like really help promote them, it's kind of it's a two birds one stone type of thing. You can promote yourself and promote your company by winning these awards. And then usually a good company will also say, okay, we recognize you won this award, we're going to help push it out, promote it, and say, okay, guess what, so and so won this in the newsletter. And so it's just I think there is a level of like, you just want a little bit of appreciation for the work that you do. Sometimes, like I said, UX work in general can beat you up. So if there's a way that you can keep yourself motivated and a drive towards something, I think it's getting that recognition that a lot of people like. And I think, I hope that more companies would also, recognize their employees' hard work internally too. I've won a couple like Employee of the Year core value awards before, a couple different jobs, not bragging, but I'm just saying like, I worked very hard for those companies.
It does matter when your own organization makes sure that the recognition is in place. So you're not just there as a placeholder UX person, but also somebody the organization responds to. And that is where the entire culture comes to play, in that the organization that you're supporting or working with, does they recognize the value of UX design, or the thing that, or the job that you're doing. So on the path of the journey of scaling your career, we talked about that we should hire freshers. So let me go to the other side of the fence. So what advice you would give to somebody who is just starting out in the journey of UX, and what they should do to stand out from the crowd and be hired?
Yeah, sure. I guess I would say it's tough right now because there's a lot of hard skills that you can learn. like, applications and things like that. So I wanted to kind of focus more on like the soft skills that you can learn that maybe you don't think about are actual skills that you can put on your resume or your portfolio. But I think it's important to really to highlight these things. And I think I have a list of 5 things I wanted to talk through.
Amazing. Cool.
The first one, I think, is the most important skill that you can have as a UX person in this industry is critical thinking. Don't take anything at face value. Really think things through and be methodical, and always ask why. Whether it's why is this project coming to us, or asking users, why do you feel this way? Why did you do this? Why? And just being very critical and very, very analytical about things. So I think that's
this thing called 7 why theory, or you ask everything. If you ask about anything 7 times, you get to the philosophy of it, you'll understand everything.
Right. My second thing is like analyzing and organizing multiple data points. I talked about that before, kind of being maybe a unicorn in a sense, but at least knowing how to analyze and read data from different data points. I think it's, like you said, somebody said they didn't like math in school, and all they're doing is doing like, data.
Dashboard. But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the best part about that is I 100% agree with the second point as well. Evidence-based design, rather than saying that why was done something certain way, if you say because of the data, I think that is where you won. The argument is in your favor, rather than somebody says, I felt like it, and they say, oh, I don't like it. Can you just move it 5 pixels to the other side?
It's like, why are we doing
Why?
this here? Having the argument of like, no, this is probably just best to just do it this way. And I know it can be hard to do that too, especially with like high level, C-suite, maybe stakeholders that are in the industry might, want to push back and might want to do something that they want to do. And I think it's always good to just be like, hey, that's a great idea, but look at what we found here. So just being, negotiating, but also, having your what is it, utility belt, your Batman utility belt. If you can have like all that knowledge and information ready to go, like that's just gonna give you more, more speed, more authority, and more.
Yeah, that is what is called being prepared.
Yeah.
For any contingency. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Piggybacking on that, I was going to say the ability to push back. I know it's hard to push back. I think there's people like me who are a little bit more like, I don't want to rock the boat, but if you're able to at least back your decisions and your pushback with that data, that's great. Be conscientious of other people's work styles. I think we get so caught up in, well, I like it this way and I'm going to do it this way. And I think being a great team player on a good UX team means you recognize how other people work and their styles, and how they take feedback and how they receive feedback, and how they're giving it to you too. Sometimes people can be very blunt, and it doesn't mean to come off as mean, but they some people can take it very like personal. I think if you can just work with people and you can create a great UX team by just realizing what everybody's styles are that they prefer to work in. Maybe people
it takes time to match the frequency, because everybody is not attacking you on the personal front. It's just that you need to understand their school of thought, where they're coming from.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that just makes a better cohesive team, regardless of where you work or what team you work on. And I would say the last thing that's really important for people in UX is to have patience and be resilient. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get pushed back on. You're going to, people are going to make decisions that are frustrating.
Yes.
You didn't, you're like, I'm not falling on this sword. I'm not going to take the blame for this type of thing. You just need to have patience and resilience. I think that's the hardest thing. I think a lot of people quit because they just can't handle the fact that people still don't get what UX is. You just got to keep, pushing at it and just,
Yeah, why something was proposed like that in the first place, that context sometimes is missing. And when that happens, there is a lot of times you end up with a product that looks like half unicorn, half a zebra or something.
Yeah, I mean, I've been dealing with that recently, where where I work right now, and it happens, and people have their own ideas and things that they want to do, and I think they're still learning the importance of UX, and that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of learning to do there. I just have to let things roll off my back sometimes and just say, okay, I'm not falling on the sword. I'm not taking the blame for how this performs. If it performs bad, that was your choice, not mine. And here's I have it in writing. Let's say I have it in writing. That it wasn't
I think
mine.
there is a, yeah. So the proper solution to that, I think you're there. You're right that you have something in writing that I'm giving it to you, but with protest that this is not the way to do it. But here is an alternative that I believe is far more solid. So in turn, that if 6 months down the line somebody said, "Who designed it?" and it's your name that pops up, you have to hold on a second.
Yeah, it's not mine.
So this is where this is another advice that actually goes not just for the new starting people or freshers, but also people who are in mid-career. That every time you ask somebody to show for their portfolio, they come up with the excuse like, "Okay, everything that I did was for work, and this is my work," and then it's because people didn't want it to be this way. People wanted it this way. So what could I do? So I think the best suggestion that we can actually give there is that why don't you make one version the way you think was better
Mhm.
and just keep it now, because it hasn't gone into development. It is free of all the NDAs. It is just a concept. You never delivered it. It was never into the competition. It was never for the work purpose. This is what your interpretation was naturally. So you can use that any way you like. So that way we would understand that what your work was. If the product is not liked by people, you have a solid reason to defend that. This is what we actually wanted to produce. And in the longer run, if your organization realizes that that was the direction that somebody should be headed into, so they can always come back to you asking that, yeah, that was a good idea earlier on, and now we can go and implement that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's also value in um if you show the version that went live, let's say, and the version that you proposed, if you have data around how the version that went live and like how you think it would, your impact of changing it and doing it this way would be, I think if you can show, like, I mean, obviously you don't want to put anything that's like confidential out there, but if you can say, oh yeah, our conversions went down 20% or something like that, like there's and kind of show in the process is like, this isn't what I wanted, but this is what happened. So here's what I'm proposing and how I got to this design decision, and hope that we can go in this direction, or maybe you're not working there anymore, but this is the way I wanted it to go, type of thing. So definitely showing any kind of stats that you can, that's not confidential, to show, like, either failures or improvements in something is always a plus. I always say, a lot of the times in portfolios I see people say, and this is the conclusion, and this is what went live, and it's like, okay, that's great. Do you have any information about how it actually performed when it went live, like, after the fact? Did you have to iterate? Did you have to, what data can you give me around that? I think that's one thing that a lot of people will end up missing when it comes to this portfolio. So it's not just about showing the process of how you got there, but also show me how it performed. Even if it went bad, if you tanked, you can say what you learned from it and how you plan to improve upon it. So I mean,
True.
Nobody's saying we have all the answers and that we're 100% correct. We can only assume with the data that we have and the direction that we're.
I think a case study that actually says we failed miserably, that holds more value than saying that we just did everything by the book and everything won Oscars. That is
that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, I've done things in the past with conversion rate optimization, and it's like, okay, we were hoping to have a greater lift in conversion on this, but we only had like 1% conversion lift. Okay, well, at least it's 1%, maybe it didn't go anywhere, and like we had to iterate on it. So there's no shame in showing the process that you took to improve.
This is how you calculate ROI of UX as well, that how much you spent and what sort of output that you've got. I mean, there is no other way to calculate that what was the benefit of actually putting up a team of UXers for this purpose. Otherwise, just devs could have just developed something and sent it to market.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this was a fun session. I mean, it was a pleasure, Shannon, to have you on our show. And that, with all the chats that we had, it's about the career side of things, the progression of it, the industry, the way it has evolved. And I believe that we actually touched upon a few serious topics on the way, that it is not just flamboyancy that actually comes from the creative background, but it's more about understanding the seriousness and the responsibility that we have, which is evangelizing UX, talking to people about the why they actually need it, understanding and explaining people that why user testing is important, the importance of getting freshers, fresh blood into the agency and company, and then actually making sure that they understand their responsibility, that they need to be thorough with anything that they are actually doing, asking questions, being evidence oriented, being target oriented, and then coming up with the solution. I think it was an amazing eye-opening episode for anybody who is going to listen, or if anybody who is listening, that if you have anybody who is just starting out in the career, even if they are not in the UX, any career they are starting out, I think this is where they can get inspiration from and learn a lot from this conversation. So thank you very much, Shannon, once again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And you summarized it very well, so better than I could.
And with that, we come to an end to this episode. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, and hope to see you soon the next time. All right. Have a good day ahead. Bye.